Professor Charles has joined us. So welcome, Professor Charles. You're welcome to share your slides, and just a request that you are finished by 11:25, as we have another session at 11:30. So you can continue.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that, but I would fail you on that one. I'll finish before. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. You can continue. I will let you know of anything that happens in the chat.
Okay. Okay. So this I'm doing this on with on behalf of myself and Elizabeth Oduole. So if she's in the audience and there are questions, she will answer them. So in terms of definitions for scoping reviews, so this is an introduction to scoping reviews. There are various definitions, and I'm just going to bring out some of them here. So, and the references we'll provide them at the end. So we'll just, so the scoping reviews are used to map concepts underpinning a research area and the main sources and types of evidence available. Scoping reviews are used to present a broad overview of the evidence pertaining to a topic, irrespective of study quality, and are useful when examining areas that are emerging to clarify key concepts and identify gaps. And you can see here, they say irrespective of study quality. So as you would see in scoping reviews, we don't usually assess the quality of studies as you would do in a systematic review. And this is another definition, which says that scoping reviews aim to map rapidly the key concepts underpinning a research area and the main sources and the types of evidence available, and can be undertaken as standalone projects in their own right, especially where an area is complex or has not been reviewed comprehensively. So, and the general idea here is just that you use scoping reviews rarely to just bring out the main concepts about the research area, and usually you don't pay attention to study quality. And very often people use scoping reviews as a first step into conducting a systematic review. Once you broadly mapped out, then you can see areas there for which a systematic review could be conducted, and then you can assess the quality of those studies. And there have been many, compared to systematic reviews, scoping reviews are it's a relatively more recent concept. And there have been people have come out with various methodologies. And okay, let me see. I think I got cut off a bit there and I lost my slides. Let me just go back to them. So for scoping reviews, the most commonly used framework for scoping reviews is the one preferred in 2005 by Arksey and O'Malley. And this methodology from Arksey and O'Malley, they propose 3 mandatory steps and have a 6th optional step. And over the years, different authors have refined and further developed the framework to enhance the rigor of scoping reviews and to promote its use as a valid method of evidence synthesis. Some of the notable improvements include the stipulation of the publication of a protocol of the planned scoping review a priori, and this has been preferred by the Joanna Briggs Institute, and the recommended use of the recently developed preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis extension for scoping reviews, which was led by Canadian colleagues with Trico as the first author in this one, and there's a reference to this at the end. Though having some characteristics in common, scoping reviews differ from systematic reviews in a number of ways, and we will highlight this in one of the slides here. So let's just look now at the steps in conducting scoping review. And these are as proposed by Arksey and O'Malley, and then we'll also indicate how the refinements that others have proposed. So in stage 1, remember I said there were 5 mandatory steps in Arksey and O'Malley's framework, and there is a 6th optional one. So in stage 1, they say this is really a stage where you identify the research question. And others have gone on just to add a bit more flesh to that, to say that in stage one, you should ensure that the research question links to and clarifies the purpose of the scoping review, and that you ensure that all of this comes out in stage 1. In stage 2, where Arksey and O'Malley say that this is the stage where you identify relevant studies, others have added that here you ensure the balance between the review feasibility and its breadth and comprehensiveness. And in stage 3, where Arksey and O'Malley says it is for study selection, others have said that you use an iterative team approach to study selection and data charting. Stage 4, in Arksey and O'Malley, they said this is where you chart the data. And then, of course, this is just what others have indicated, that here you identify key information from included studies using a consensus data charting form, updated as necessary and populated using qualitative content analysis approach. So this is just about what you will say, where you extract data in a systematic review. And stage 5, and remember we said that Arksey and O'Malley, they propose 5 mandatory steps and a 6th one, which is optional. So stage 5, which is then the last stage in Arksey and O'Malley's framework, is where you collect, summarize, and report the results. And others have added that at this stage, you analyze using descriptive numerical summary analysis and qualitative thematic analysis. Report the results, linking them to the purpose of the review, and consider the meaning of the findings relative to future research and possible implications of the policy. And then the 6th one, which Arksey and O'Malley said was optional, is the consultative stage. And this is where, and if you do it, where you consult and present your results and engage with stakeholders, then you should document what you have done to enhance the overall quality of the scoping review when used. This can be carried out if relevant for the purpose of the review. Let me just go back again. Just say that we said that scoping reviews are used to map the concepts underpinning a research area and the main sources and types of evidence available, and that the most commonly used framework is that proposed by Arksey and O'Malley, where they have 5 mandatory steps and a 6th optional step. And I've shown here what those steps are. The stage 1 is where you identify the research question. Stage 2 is where you identify the studies. Then stage 3 deals with study selection. Stage 4 is where you chart the data and you identify key information from included studies using a consensus data charting form, updated as necessary and populated using qualitative content analysis. And then stage 5 is where you collect, summarize, and report the results. And then the optional stage 6 is where you could have a consultative exercise. And if you do that, then you should document to enhance the overall quality of the scoping review. And this is where you could present the results of your scoping review to the key stakeholders that you would have identified, and then get their views on that. And this is an example of a scoping review protocol led by Elizabeth Oduole, who helped to prepare this presentation. And she did this as a scoping review protocol for tools available for investigating vaccine hesitancy. And what she did there was the review would be conducted using the framework for scoping review preferred by Arksey and O'Malley, which I presented here, and it would be reported using the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis extension for scoping reviews. And that is what she eventually did, where she conducted the scoping review of the tools available for measuring vaccine hesitancy. And this is just a snapshot of the first page of that review as published. So what she did then was she searched comprehensively. You remember that stage 2 where you identify the studies, where you have to search from the had about from this stage about 12,000 records, a lot of which were not really very relevant to this, and eventually she included about, I think, 76 studies in this systematic review. I indicated that scoping reviews are more recent and differ from systematic reviews. So let me just bring out some of those differences. In scoping reviews, you aim to scope, as it were, bring out the broad content, or just map out what is in the literature for available evidence on a particular topic. While in systematic reviews, you aim to synthesize the best evidence available on that particular topic. In scoping reviews, research questions are generally quite broad. But in systematic reviews, research questions tend to be specific and focused. And in scoping reviews, well, in systematic reviews, we use what, if you are doing for an intervention, systematic review where you're looking at like the effect of a vaccine, the effect of medication, the effect of, and one intervention versus the other, then you have to identify what your population is, what the intervention is, what the comparator is, and the outcome. But for scoping reviews, you do we use what the participants, the concept, and the context to map out this broad area. In a scoping review, we now also there's also then recommended that the protocol should be done beforehand and it should be registered. In systematic reviews, of course, it is mandatory to have the protocol and to register it. And there are various platforms where you can register. Prospero is one of the most used ones. And if it is a Cochrane review, then of course, you can also publish that in the Cochrane library. But since scoping review, Prospero will not accept scoping review protocol. So there is Open Science Framework, OSF, where you can register that. And in scoping reviews, we do not usually assess the quality of the evidence. So first of all, you don't have to assess the quality of the studies included in the review, but in systematic reviews, you have to do that. Also, you don't have to assess the quality of the evidence or the certainty of the evidence, as others would call it. But in systematic reviews, you do have to appraise the certainty of the evidence. And usually, you are just mapping the area to just see broadly what is on that particular topic. So it's not often used to inform policy or practice because you don't really synthesizing the evidence and assessing the certainty of that evidence. But usually, you would use a systematic review on a particular topic, either to inform policy and or practice. So those would be the differences between scoping reviews and systematic reviews. And these are the references that were used to prepare this presentation. The first one is the Arksey and O'Malley paper from 2005. Then the Joanna Briggs Institute, so they're also quite active in terms of doing systematic reviews and also scoping reviews, and they've come out with a manual that guide the conduct of scoping reviews. Then there is the paper by Trico, where they did about, well, with systematic review, we know, like for, I expect that those who have done in medical research would know that if you have for trials, there is a checklist for reporting that the consult. For systematic reviews, we have PRISMA, preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And this has been extended to scoping reviews, and that was done by Trico and her team in Canada. And then they have also done various other studies around that. And those are these references there. And then one of the first group of authors that tried to do really that to advance the methodology of scoping reviews after Arksey and O'Malley were Levac and team, where they published this paper in 2010, where they added some specifics on how to advance the methodology scoping reviews after what Arksey and O'Malley did. And then I presented the two papers from Elizabeth Oduwele. First of all, the scoping review protocol that she published, and then her scoping review that she did on tools to measure vaccine hesitancy. And I would like to thank you, and then see that if there are any questions or any comments, and if people have experience of using this, I would really appreciate that, so that they share that. And like we saw with Arksey and O'Malley, they started and others have refined and improved on that. And that's really the essence of this presentation. People have had more experience or things like that. It's good to share that experience, and then so that people who are interested in using this methodology can really use the best available practice. Thank you so much.
Professor Vaisonge, thank you so much for that overview. For all present in the webinar, we have about now 25 minutes worth of questions which you can ask. You can raise your hand and then you can speak. For now, I would just concentrate on the chat. Are scoping reviews relevant for other fields, sustainable development? If so, are there any considerations we should be aware of?
Okay, good questions. I think scoping reviews for any, they can be used in any field. And I think the main thing, like we've shown there with scoping reviews, is just that, you use this really to map the concepts underpinning an area. So you can use it really in any field.
Okay. Tess Libber just commented they can be used for any topic for which there is existing literature, as the scoping review aims to map out concepts and evidence type sources already available in existing literature, as is applicable to your research question or area. You have any comment on that, Professor?
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone has their hand up. Can you kindly unmute and speak so that you can speak to Professor Waisonge? Okay. Let me continue with the chat. If not to inform policy, is the scoping review purely to provide key points and gaps on the topic? By Mrs. van der Kerk.
Yes, I would agree with that. When I say it's not to inform policy and practice, because you don't synthesize the evidence and the certainty of that, but you can definitely use that in the scoping review to identify if there's a need for a systematic review, what has been done on that particular topic, and then you identified what maybe if there is enough information there to do a systematic review, for example, on the particular topic. And then if you were then to do the systematic review and to assess the certainty of the evidence on that particular topic, then it would help you in the policy or the practice. Yes, so that was just a very long way of agreeing with that comment.
Okay, Mr. Agarivu, Mrs. Agarivu. In a PhD study where literature review is expected, can a scoping review replace the usual literature review?
I think that's a discussion you need to have with your supervisor. And I think there will certainly be a context where it might be good for that place of a literature review to map out, to use it really to map the broad area of that. So it is possible, but it is something to discuss with your supervisor.
Okay. Should the screening of titles and abstract or other steps in scoping be done in duplicate? It's by Marcel Kittinge, and he had his hand up earlier on, so you're welcome to speak up if you wish to.
Yeah,
good morning. No, I think I was just seeking clarity regarding as we do in systematic review, so all the processes have to be done in a duplicate. So I wanted to just to know, should the same be applied to to systematic to scoping review, all the other processes such as screening of title and abstract and others, also be done in duplicate? Thank you.
You know, that's a very relevant question, and it is a yes and a no. It just depends. As you would know, when you want to do even a systematic review rapidly, for a rapid systematic review, there could be some steps that can be abridged, where you could maybe in the interest of time, that you want to just have one author do the initial screening. And then maybe when it's in the next steps that you do that in duplicate. So depending on the topic and the time available, if you justify why you are not doing duplicate screening, that would be okay. And I see Elizabeth Oduole is there. Elizabeth, would you agree with that?
I agree with you, Prof. Yes. Screening of titles and abstracts can be done by a single author with scoping review. Thank you.
And Elizabeth is, on this particular topic, she is my prof. She is the expert.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I've got a question by Mrs. or Mr. Gaji. When is a scoping review preferable to a narrative review?
Good question. You know, it does depend on what you meant. You know, narrative reviews in a where we, well, a typical context. We would consider narrative reviews as non-systematic reviews. So there are still systematic reviews, but because they haven't used this rigorous approach to refine the question, I search comprehensively and select and extract and synthesize in your very rigorous way, like a systematic review, then we will call that narrative review. But you would have seen from what we said there that you use a scoping review just to map out the broad field, what is available there. So if you are really very much interested in mapping the concepts underpinning a research area, that it would be a scoping review that you would use. Narrative reviews, in the sense that I've just described, where they are non-systematic reviews, in my view, do not have a place in any context, because you are likely to arrive at very wrong conclusions, and people can base their decisions around that.
Okay, thanks for that. Dr. Young comments that there's a valuable comparison between scoping reviews and systematic reviews. Lexi is asking, are there any other methods for analysis that are appropriate for scoping reviews besides a qualitative content analysis?
Good question. There would definitely be, but if you consider why you do a scoping review, so I would not expect you to do a meta-analysis when you're doing a scoping review, because it would not be appropriate. It can just lead to wrong conclusions. But they would possibly, there are likely to be other methods. But what I would advise is, if you can read those, maybe that Joanna Briggs paper that I have here, and I will share the presentation. And Elizabeth, please go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Prof. Just to add to your answer, the basic quantitative methodology is also applicable in scoping reviews. You know, you have to give the number, for example, the percentage of papers talking about a particular concept, and, you know, just a brief, okay, of the 26 papers you had, 5 were this, 30% were that, and yeah, so it's not only qualitative content analysis alone. You can also use basic descriptive quantitative analysis in your scoping review, as well as other methods of qualitative, like the narrative review we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Minette is asking, so the order should be scoping review, systematic review, research article. I'm not sure what the question is here. Minette, do you want to speak just to explain what you need to know?
Good morning, and thank you very much for this very valuable presentation. I want to know if you are embarking on a specific research article, or will a scoping review and then a systematic review help you in framing the problem for the research article? That is my one question, and I was just about to type another question asking, where can one see a conclusive list of type of review articles, because there seem to be a lot. If one think about narrative review as well, and if you think of a meta-analysis and things like that, is there something like a conclusive list of type of review articles? But my main question now was, would the order be scoping review and then systematic review to inform the problem framing for a research article? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You know, there are two things. Before I answer that, there should be we can look for. I think I've seen an article where people have really talked about. It might have been from I was checked with Sharon Strauss. Is really one of the first people in evidence synthesis. She does a lot of knowledge translation, and has recently written exclusively there. You saw that paper by Trico that we showed. Trico work, Andrea Trico works with her. I'm certain that I've seen papers where they are published, where they really look at all the types of reviews that are out there. We could search and share. And I think I hear what you are saying. For a systematic review is useful both to researchers and to decision makers. A systematic review is useful to researchers in the sense that when you synthesize the evidence on the particular topic, you will see where the gaps are, and then that would inform your research. And that is why with some funders, when you're applying for research to conduct a primary study, they want to see how that paper, how you came up with that research question. And the first thing really should be that you need to do a systematic review on that particular topic and see what the gaps are, because it might be that you will be reinventing the wheel, because we already know enough on that particular topic. So you do a systematic review, you identify where the gaps are, and then that informs your research question. That is one part. And then we also said that when you're starting on a very broad topic, it would be important that you do a scoping review, and then that might also inform a systematic review. So if you look at it in that sense, then yes, if you are doing on a particular topic, if you wanted to, it might be that you can broadly map out what the literature is around that on that particular topic. That would be a scoping review, and you'd identify the need for a systematic review. Once you've synthesized that, then maybe you can find out where the gaps are for your primary study. In a sense, then that is the sequence you would go, but it's not always in every setting. For some, yes, you might just go ahead and do your systematic review if you already know quite a bit about that and know where there is a specific need for systematic review, and you might even do a scoping review and realize that people have done even so many systematic reviews on that particular topic, which would then you also then describe in your scoping review there and identify where there's still a need for a systematic review, or probably synthesize that and then find out where the gaps or still exist for systematic for a primary study. So yes, in a sense.
Maggie
Thank you very
is,
much.
thank you. Maggie is asking, can you use scoping review and systematic review at the same time? That's essentially what you were speaking of now.
No, because the same time, no, because you know, and these are all. You have to finish one. You know, see, I was scratching my head trying to see how to answer that one, but the answer would be no. You cannot do those. Well, the same time, if you have another team, you can still do and then keep one. Just like you can do many things at the same time. If what you meant is you devote time, do this particular part, and then you have your timetable that at this time you'll be doing this, and at this time, so you could be involved in a scoping review, a systematic review, and a primary study. Nothing stops you from doing that. But on one particular topic, you will have to finish. If you wanted to map out the broad concepts in that particular on that particular topic, to find out what is available out there before you go to do your systematic review, then it wouldn't make sense to be doing them at the same time, because you want your scoping review to inform the systematic review.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Just this question from my side, if you do your scoping review, what kind of themes are you looking at? The authors or the themes or the methodology or the research questions when you do either the scoping or systematic review? What are the type of qualitative data you need to look at actually?
Maybe just to give, the example I gave there, Elizabeth, maybe just take one of your scoping reviews, maybe the one where you look at tools for measuring vaccine hesitancy. Just talk to us what you were looking for and what you found.
Okay, thanks, Prof. So the general idea of that particular scoping review was to map the available literature for what was available on vaccine hesitancy. It was before COVID that protocol was planned and written before COVID, and vaccine hesitancy hadn't taken center stage yet. So not much was known about it. It was then an emerging field. So we needed to know what was in the literature, what was available in the literature, what tools had been used to measure vaccine hesitancy, because that was what we were going to do before COVID. We were going to validate a tool to measure vaccine hesitancy. Then before we could carry that out, fortunately we had done the qualitative part of that study, but before the quantitative part could kick in, COVID struck. So even though the protocol was published as to what vaccine hesitancy tool was, what current tools were available, due to the pandemic, the subsequent review had to be amended to reflect the change. So now we had to limit it to a 10-year period and look for both qualitative tools and quantitative tools that had been used to measure vaccine hesitancy pre-pandemic era, because during the pandemic, all manners of tools popped up, and yes. So I don't know if I've answered sufficiently the question.
Let me just, you've answered. So if we look at that, because in your review, the scoping review, you were specifically just looking to find out what tools have been used to measure vaccine hesitancy, whether quantitative or qualitative that were used.
Exactly.
And then that is what you looked for, and then you would describe how many tools are out there,
Yes.
what they are measuring, and that,
Exactly.
and then you choose one of them to use in your study. So, so that would be the answer to that question, because another person could have chosen that for the scoping review on vaccine hesitancy, they want to find out how vaccine hesitancy is defined. Then they will look for all those definitions that were already there, and then and then maybe use one that you want to, that if that was your object of doing a systematic review of the scoping review, to find out how vaccine hesitancy is defined. In your case, it was to look at what the tools are there. So it really depends on the question you want to answer. So depending on the question, then it would be what you are. Then you will see the kind of things that you would be looking for. So it would probably not be looking for. And another one could be that you want to see who are the people who are publishing that particular area. So maybe you would then be looking for those study authors and all of that. So thank you, Elizabeth. And I think, so that is essentially, it depends really on your question, on what you will look for in a scoping review.
Okay, thank you, Prof. What happens if you actually embark on a scoping review and there's some new evidence coming to the fore? Can you include the new topic in the scoping review, or do you need to stick with the original plan?
Let me, I would like Elizabeth to answer that, but before she does that, let me just show a slide in this presentation that she made for me. I don't know if it is showing there. So there was yeah, Elizabeth, answer that question, and then I'll see what I was looking for here. This is an order from Prof.
Yes, sir.
Don't worry.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question again, please?
Okay, so you're focusing on one aspect for your scoping review, and in the process, you come upon something that you never thought of.
Yeah.
Would you then include it in your study, or say it's another study, or if it's related to what you're doing, would you still include it? How would you handle something like that?
Okay, thank you. I think Prof has answered the question by the slide he projected, because you see in the stage 2, you know, you have to ensure balance between feasibility and breadth and comprehensiveness. So if you have a broad topic, or you have a topic, and then in the process of that, like it happened to me, something struck and then other evidences are coming up, you keep your focus on your original topic, but mention, you know, as part of maybe developing area or area for future research, that, oh, these things are, this is emerging and that is emerging, and you can, this is emerging and that is emerging, and it is noted for future area, but you keep focus on your original research question and your objective. Otherwise, it will be too diffuse, and you know, you may not finish your review in the allocated time. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, because it happens to students that are doing one thing and then they discover another, and then they sort of get sidetracked.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you can continue like that forever.
That's academics. They always onto something. Mrs. van Niekerk, are so systematic reviews specific to identifying available tools to measure something, but I assume it can be used in general to avail information literature available on something like nutrition and, I'm not sure, TB in pediatrics. Do you want to elaborate further, Mrs. van Niekerk, maybe?
I just wanted to be clear because some of my colleagues are also busy with scoping reviews, and if I recall correctly, they're also looking at available tools to measure various aspects like quality of life in children with TB or so forth. So per se, I was not interested necessarily in a tool, but looking in general, because I'm trying to angle my PhD around nutrition and TB. There's not a lot of available evidence, and I thought then a scoping review would be quite a good idea to look at that topic in general and see what the available literature is, and then identify the gaps. Would that be a feasible scoping review to do?
Yeah, I think you could do that and just first do a scoping review just to see what is out there in the literature around that. And then maybe from there you can identify a specific focus for a systematic review, and then of course even the primary question that you would want to answer around that. So yeah, I agree. Maybe the scoping review might be the place to start. But it would be good to do a protocol around that, where you define your question well and write a protocol so that it's just you are focused on you know what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Mrs. Geldenhuys, how much time should you allocate to doing a scoping review?
That's a good question. I don't think there's a right answer around this. It will just depend on what you know. If you have a big team and there's good division of labor, I'm sure you could do a yeah, I have a good smile, right? So it just depends, really. Yeah. But it would be, yeah, it depends on what the objective is for that. The people have done, just like with systematic reviews, some have taken years and some have been shorter. And it's also the same for scoping reviews. But you just have to see, depend on your time and who else is available to assist you with that. But depending on the question, you can do it in any length of time.
Okay. Spindili, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Is it possible to do a scoping review on literature that has already been scoped? So I assume it's an extra step beside your scoping review. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I'm just asking, Prof, not necessarily as an extra step, but when you look through literature, you find that there's work that has already gone through the scoping review process. Is it possible now, when you are looking at a particular area and you are finding literature that comes as scoping reviews, to now incorporate that as part of your own work?
Yes, if what you are finding is, if it is in line with what you are looking for, you could do a scoping review, and the studies you include there are also scoping reviews or even systematic reviews. So really, it depends on your topic, and if there's other scoping review, maybe they scope smaller aspects of that. When where yours is broader, then maybe you can include that there. So yeah, I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Comment from Monique. In my experience, it is quite time consuming, but largely depend on how big the team is and how many references meet your inclusion criteria.
I agree. Elizabeth, would you agree too?
Elizabeth, do you have something to add to this?
Yes, Prof, I do agree. And I know the reason for your smile, because when you talked about a big team, some of us were not privileged to have such a big team. So yeah, it could be time consuming depending on the nature of the question and your study selection criteria. That's why it is necessary that those are defined, a priori, and you consider them very well so that you don't include, yes, you aim to include as many studies as possible, but that doesn't mean that you include all the studies under the sun. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Colleagues, we've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any questions someone wants to ask? Please put up your hand and put in a chat or comments to Professor Charles or Elizabeth. Okay, it seems that everybody have got the information. You're welcome to visit your faculty librarian on possible sources for your scoping review. Please, we are always there to assist you or to wave you on your journey. So thank you, Professor Waisonge and Elizabeth, for a very informative session. These presentations will be made available to you on our YouTube channel, and it will be recorded and you will receive the slides as well. So thank you so much. We will be seeing you if you join us for Introduction to Qualitative Research. Thank you so much.
Thank you.